Hello, Charles Knapp back again. This time the video will be on Scrububus from Byron Preiss's book, The Secret. And for a long time I had no clue what was going on with this. But we're going to cover this. This is the first page. It has a photograph at the bottom. And there's another photograph here which I believe was altered from the original photograph. But let's get started here with the figure that we see in both of these. And Eric Thomas pointed out that this is Carol Burnett. And so there's a connection here with Carol Burnett. She was the first woman to host a comedy variety series. And she did parodies, and she did a lot of cultural things, cultural issues, and it's a pretty funny show. If you're young, I'm sorry you missed that, but you can go back. You can see some of the videos of the old shows. So we're going to get right into this. And one of the videos Eric Thomas found was Carol Burnett in a skit or sketch or whatever you want to call it, where she's the laundry lady, and in the parody or the skit she uses commercials to make this hilarious. So there's a lot of things that you have to kind of dig back to find out why it was funny or what was going on. Anyway, these are some screenshots that I got off of the video. And here she's obviously doing laundry. And that is Carol Burnett. And at one point she sticks her head in the refrigerator and comes out wearing a big crown on her head. And that is from a commercial, old commercials with Imperial margarine, where the individual would get a crown on their head. Flavor fit for a queen. And here's another one at the end of the skit. She comes in with a lance through her stomach and falls down. And that's from the Ajax commercials. Nobody got impaled, but they made it into some humor. And these involve cleaning. And if you read through the wording on the Scrububus, there's a lot of information about cleaning and cleaning agents and things like that. But if you look closely at the picture, you see that Carol is actually coming out of the washing machine. And if you go through and you start marking the words to figure out what's going on here, you can make some pretty good connections. So Carol coming out of the washing machine. Well, coming out was terminology for individuals coming out of the closet regarding their sexuality as being gay. So there's some things going on here we have to decipher. And so we'll start with that. And there was no indication that Carol Burnett was ever publicly known or thought of as gay. But she had a friend, Julie Andrews, which you recognize from The Sound of Music and other works like Mary Poppins. But they were playing a joke one time, and they were on some other people, and they were caught. They were seen kissing each other. So that kind of stimulated. He's had some rumors going on about that topic. And Carol Burnett was she was a proponent of gay rights. She didn't come out and just say that, but through her show and friendships, she supported the gay community. We also have what is known as the stereotype with gay men. And that was common back in the 70s, that gay men were very clean, that they were very picky on cleanliness. And so if you go back and read Scrububus, you will see that there's an emphasis on cleaning and squeaky clean. You can see some of the wording. So that's part of what's going on here. Now, if the bottom of the caption at the bottom of the photograph here, it talks about, it says places like Iowa, squeaky clean. Well, why Iowa? Well, back in the day, Anita Bryant was an anti-gay crusader, and she was hit in the face by a pie in Iowa. So that's our connection with Iowa. And Anita Bryant, she had all kinds of problems after that, and eventually she lost her job. She was a spokeswoman for Florida Orange Juice, and she was a singer. All of that nosedived, and she got divorced. So it was quite a backlash that caused her all kinds of problems. But that's what's going on. That's why the wording is places like Iowa, squeaky clean. You have to make these connections to figure it out. Over here it talks about the Puritan Pilgrim right here. And Pilgrim, if you go to the Pilgrim in the back of the book, I did a video on the Pilgrim. And if you look at what that's about, it's about censorship and the Puritans. And I'm not going to go through the whole video again, but those are the connections with Pilgrim. You also have Brownie mentioned frequently in the wording of the Scrububus, and you can see why if you start looking at that. The creation of brownies was in Chicago for the Chicago World's Columbian Exposition. You also have a connection with Boston and molasses. So we'll look at that a little closer. The World's Columbian Exposition is also known as the Chicago World's Fair. And if you look in Byron's back of the book, there is a Chicago Ferry. And we know from that that's connected to baseball. And I've shown in a video that results in baseball, Paul Revere, which is Boston, and the spotter's tips, back of home plate. And from that, we came up with the artwork that shows the home plate and a leg distance of 3 feet, which, again, I've talked about that in previous videos. Byron uses a leg length as 3 feet. So he's telling us exactly from home plate, 3 feet. And that's also shown in Palancar's art with a home plate right here. And then the leg is 3 feet. And this is representing the cask. And you can see the identical kind of pattern in the artwork on the right side here. So we have a baseball connection to Chicago. We also have molasses connected to Boston, and brownies connected to Chicago. The molasses is very interesting. There was a great molasses flood in 1919 in Boston, North End, and the storage tank had 2.3 million gallons of molasses, and it burst and traveled about 35 miles an hour, killing 21 people. So, and why is that important in this puzzle? Well, one thing to note is that many times Byron discusses and uses things that were first. There was one of the first class action lawsuits in Massachusetts was against the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, which owned the tank, and the molasses just went everywhere. And that was a successful class action lawsuit. But more importantly, the location. That site where that tank burst became Langone Park, featuring Little League Baseball. And if you're familiar with the Boston puzzle of Byron's The Secret, you'll know that it was Langone Park was where that cask was buried. So, going back to the first page of Scrububus, you can see there's some baseball connections right here under spotters tips. It says spotters indeed. Out, out, out. Spotter in baseball terminology, there's a baseball spotter in the context of broadcasting is a tool or chart used by play-by-play announcers to quickly access information on players and the teams during a game. Also, in addition, the 3 outs. 3 outs is the end of the inning. It's over. He's done. We're done with this. Out, out, out. You move on. Just like 3 strikes and you're out. 3 outs. End of the inning for that team. So what we're left with is there are connections to San Francisco, Boston, and baseball. In addition, on the second image, the shadows here are very suspicious. You notice that the doll that represents Carol Burnett's coming out of the shadow. This arm is extended from previously. So we have an extended arm and also an interesting shadow pattern. That's something that will require additional investigation. Thank you, and that's the end of this video.